What is up, everybody? This is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about the Foundation Season 2, Episode 10 review. And also, it is a review of that episode, but also a review of the U.S. Empire at the same time. And it is called Flagellating as Rome Burns. So we will be reviewing both the Apple science fiction TV series episode. I think this is like the fourth video I've made in that, but you know it's a fun show to review. So and then we also get to see Lee Face's face illuminated by unknown things on fire. This, if you've seen the trailer for this series, you've probably seen that clip. It's, to me, it's actually one of the most standout shots. It's not actually that like spectacle wise and production value wise. It's probably one of the simpler shots to get, but it's like it's probably one of the standout, one of the most memorable shots from the Foundation series, just because of like what it suggests. It is like the final shot of it's the final shot of the trailer, and it's also the final shot of that episode. If you want to learn what flagellation is about, well, you're gonna have to watch the episode. One of the sickest burns in TV and film history was in that episode where well, you know, the equivalent of Joe Biden or Caesar in the previous Star Spangled, the pre Star Spangled Roman Empire. He is basically behaving very stupidly, as is usual, towards the end of the Empire, and his name is Empire also, and the robot. There is a robot female, like, I guess, gynoid character who is actually in charge, actually keeping everything together, while he thinks that he is. And she basically says, he's talking about like how he's done such amazing things and he's such a great person, and like, look at all the amazing empire that he has built. And then she says, you are a sperm mistaking your own flagellations for complexity. I was actually reading about like that line, because there's like a film reporter was asking the showrunner, I think her name is Roxanne something, I can't remember what her last name is. Like, how did that line come about? Like, the people must have been cracking up on the set when that line was made. And apparently, like, she actually didn't want that line to be that funny, because it was more like, it's supposed to be like conveyed robotically and just like factually. So they actually had to do it many, many times to make it not seem so sarcastic. It's just kind of like, it's just the facts. But it does. It is one of the best lines in this show. But anyways, so that's why I titled this stream as Flagellating as Rome Burns. But anyways, we'll get into that as time moves on. I want everybody to appreciate, you know, all of the time, the painstaking, all of the you know, I want to take people to take into consideration the flagellation, the self-flagellation that I did, the self-sacrificial efforts I have put into producing this image. Look at all of those little mini sub thumbnails I have thrown, you know, like an entire grocery list of receipts, you know, being thrown in the face of some tantrum throwing man, whilst you know, screaming like the guy who just got convicted, and former Scientologist and former That 70s Show star, just having all these receipts just thrown in your face, and then there's you flagellating, right? Sometimes that means beating yourself off uh, while committing horrible sexual abuse to someone, which that 70s show star did do. And then sometimes your friends Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher, CIA stan. Speaking of Empire, CIA standing Ashton Kutcher might throw down for you. Joining in on the burning of your empire and the burning of your credibility as the foundation that is the wokeists is just called being a normal human. Come for you and all your friends. But sometimes the flagellation means, because self-flagellation, of course, is speaking of empire and the Catholic of the Holy Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Catholic Church engages in much self-flagellation, right, of whipping oneself, and ostensibly to cleanse themselves of their sins. But the United States is certainly self-flagellating with failed attempted semiconductor and chip sanctions, as China's Huawei phone sales light years beyond whatever the iPhone thought was possible, including taking pictures of the moon, where you can see literal craters, with a brand new phone, so with 7nm chips. And so that's the kind of self-flagellation, right? You think you're gonna flagellate the barbarian, right? The barbarian. That's what the West calls people that are not part of their empire. But you end up the cat of nine tails ends up whipping around and whacking you in the face, and then you self-flagellate, right? But the U.S. is still kind of like this, even though it's it can't figure out when it's losing. It's like, well, the Chinese semiconductor producer chip producer SMIC violated our sanctions by selling to Chinese company Huawei, right? And the U.S. is like, well, surely if we try to flagellate them harder with more sanctions, I'm sure that will work. And then the U.S. is just like, that's DC and Wall Street right now. Anyways, I'm kind of let's talk about Foundation, season 2, episode 10 though. This one has like some of it about this article here has some information about it that I thought was interesting. It's like a behind the scenes. Oh, Roxanne Dawson is the director. So it's kind of like The Witcher. It's kind of like The Witcher, right? Except Lee Pace hasn't pulled a Henry Cavill yet, so that's good. Hopefully he won't. Hopefully Lee Pace, that's the main actor in the show. Well, like not the main actor. He plays Empire. He's played one of the most prominent figures. Technically, he's not really the main character. He's the main antagonist, possibly. But like The Witcher, it has a woman showrunner, right? I forget who was running The Witcher, but it was a woman. And then you had Henry Cavill, but then Henry Cavill went full. Henry Cavill, I shouldn't say he didn't go. Who is that person? Topher Grace is currently. I'm trying to cross too many streams at the same time. Yeah, of course. Now, of course, the big news is Danny Masterson sentence vindicates Topher Grace's rumors. Topher Grace was like, "Hey, all y'all, weird rape apologists, sexual abuse enablers, Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher. Danny Masterson is not a good person. You should not be like trying to justify that. I'm out of here." So Topher Grace. So I was gonna say, that's one of the news. So as the Rome that is the cast of that 70s show is burning. Right? Some people are like, some of the like. So after Topher Grace is like, I'm gonna exit this Trantor. I'm gonna exit this Rome. I'm gonna go to the Foundation. I'm gonna kind of figure out, start something else out here, and now everybody's upset. Everybody is just like using Spider-Man 3 as a trump card, like that. Topher Grace, well, Spider-Man 3, because he happened to be playing Venom in Spider-Man 3. That's some kind of like own, um, also completely not relevant to rape accusations, which is the point. But that kind of says a lot about the people. Anyways, so and then I was thinking of Henry Cavill because Henry Cavill on The Witcher, because he was like the he was the thirst trap. He was the thirst trap for straight women to get people to watch that show. A lot of people to watch that show, which it worked. It did work. And then he was like, no, I don't like being directed by women when they do something. I don't know, jackass buffoonery. I don't know. He hung out with the Manosphere and listened to Steve Bannon maybe too many times. I don't know. He and then he's like, then he got all weird, and then now he's out of there. So I shouldn't say that's not a Danny Masterson. Danny Masterson is committing like straight up terrible like sexual literal crimes, but this guy just kind of like was kind of, he just didn't show up for some, Henry Cavill didn't show up for some like required staff meetings and just like butted heads with the female director and showrunner, and then like that was problems, and so my point by going over that is that like, so Henry Cavill burned his own, he also like kind of he self-flagellated. He was all like, no, I don't want to, like, I will chart my own course and I will leave The Witcher and do Superman. And then he self-flagellated, kind of like the United States. He was like, I will build my own empire, and I will do it the way that I want. And then he's like, I'm gonna leave this and I'm gonna do Superman. And then he signed up for Superman, and then that whole thing got canceled, and then he's totally out of Superman. So he kind of did his own self-flagellation. I feel Henry Cavill kind of did his own self-flagellation, right? So this is what happens. Too much patriarchy, which is virtually every empire that where a country expands and controls regions that are beyond its own historical, cultural, linguistic, and eternally consistent polity demographic, right? Where so like the Roman Empire expanded to include huge swaths of Europe and Africa. The United States includes the world. The British Empire, the sun never set upon. So anytime, and usually it's a patriarchy when that happens, right? And so you have self-flagellating, dick-headed, literal penis-headed, sperm-brained, frothing testosterone flouters, and these are the kind of people that run and when they get in charge, it just turns out it usually doesn't end good. It usually ends in your career on fire, or sometimes it ends in your empire collapsing and then everyone's suffering and dying. People are already suffering before Rome burned. That should be, and also in the United States and around the world, people have been suffering even before the United States was collapsing like now. But it's important to note that. But so what I want to say is I hope that Lee Pace doesn't go the Henry Cavill route. You have to stay the Topher Grace route. Don't like. I hope that Lee Pace doesn't accidentally listen to too many weird manosphere podcasts. Don't tune into Elon Musk's Twitter or X Spaces or whatever ridiculous name Elon is another self-flagellator. He's like, I'll call it X, and more people leave. I know, I'll charge $8, and then he sets more of his Bluebird app on fire. I know, I've got it's. I have it. I will bring all the Nazis back. Oh my god! And I just lost half of Twitter, and now they're all. So that Elon is another self-flagellator. He's just like, whoosh, and it whips back in it. His sperm tail whips out of his his dick head, pinhead shaped head, and it comes out and it whips him in the face. And so, but anyways, I'm actually I did just watch this movie called Bodies, which came out last year. I was having so many discussions. I was having a lot of interactions with people, and I was thinking about the COVID and masking, and the fact that there's massive increases in hospitalization, sickness, disabilities, and Everybody's self-flagellating by not masking and not taking social distancing and pandemic seriously, and giving themselves death and disability, and entire football teams are canceling their season. Half of all the music industry is having all their shows canceled because of this, pretending it's not COVID. Right? Hospitals are collapsing. I just listen. I didn't even have like a. No, actually, I guess I do. I have a Statue of Liberty with a mask on. But it's like, and I was thinking like, I gotta watch something else, and so I watched Bodies. As a quick aside, Bodies. Actually, I thought it was pretty interesting. Bodies. It is definitely like a Gen Z. It's a very talky. It's a very witty, talky movie, and it's a very like definitely like a Gen Z movie, like everything. But Lee Pace happens to show up in it. I thought that was interesting. In this movie, Bodies. Lee Pace is like the honorary millennial. Actually, I thought that was interesting. I don't really think of myself as being that old, but I know, we're older than no, as millennials, we're twice as old as 20-year-olds. A lot of us, right? So, how old is this guy? Oh, he's 44. Okay, so he's like late Gen X, but he could be a millennial, And so 20-somethings plan a hurricane party at a remote family mansion. The party game turns deadly, and the fresh and funny looking backstabbing fake friends. This movie is also kind of like, people burn themselves, and it's a bunch of rich spoiled brats, and they're having it out in a pool. And I probably shouldn't show any more of this, otherwise YouTube might take it down for copyright infringement. But coming back to this, and I thought that it was interesting because it kind of shows the divide. I wouldn't say it's not like a movie that encapsulates Gen Z. It's specifically the wealthy and ultra wealthy of Gen Z. It's more that's who that's focusing on. The children whose mommy is Beyonce and daddy is Jay-Z, or the children whose parents are not even actors, right? Not even actors, because not all actors are wealthy, right? 85% of actors make poverty wages, less than $27,000 a year. But the mommy and daddy might be a banker, or like a top of the A-list actors, like Colin Farrell, who does have millions of dollars, right? And so that's a movie that's about the insides of the Roman capital. So that's and everybody behaves very self-flagellationally, let's say. And I'm just gonna say that word a lot. Flagellating could be. Anyway, let's move on. So I haven't really talked about movie stuff specifically for a bit, so I'm just like citing random shows. But yeah, let's talk about this. So Apple TV released a long ago, not far away, 9th penultimate episode of the season of Foundation. Like, I have multiple movies about what Foundation is. It's a Isaac Asimov science fictional series that is actually, one thing I have recently learned is that Isaac Asimov read multiple times through like the recountings of the fall of Rome, and then the Dark Ages, the European medieval period, and the end of civilization, right? I would argue that the Romans never had a civilization, but it's more like like the United States. It was a thieves and murderers and colonial plunderers pretense at civilization, right? Like the indigenous people of Turtle Island, China had a civilization. They still have one of the longest perpetually existing. Peoples of the Pacific had civilization. There was African civilizations. The Romans were never a civilization, but they pretended to be one by putting lots of statues and having fancy parties and beautiful architecture for a bit in one tiny part of Rome. Kind of like America. It's not really a civilization, right? It built some nice buildings, but it needed, like in Britain, they needed to steal from everyone else. They had to steal from 90% of the world to build in 3% of the world a few nice buildings. It's not that's stealing. That's called stolen valor, But anyway, that I digress. And so the Foundation is Isaac Asimov, who was a Russian Jew who moved to the United States in the early 20th century, or his parents moved, and he wrote this series, right? That's about empire and the fall of empire. And he specifically was speaking really directly to the Roman Empire, as I now realize. But obviously, it applies to all empire, but it definitely is recounting that. And like, what if there was a way to predict what would happen and then try to adjust, psychohistory is just, it's like, it's arguably like dialectical materialism, but what if we could look at the movements of the same way that we can determine the approximate trajectory of a flock of birds or a herd of wildebeests given mathematical patterns, right? We don't know what any individual's doing, but together we can determine, right, what the an approximate path that flocking pattern will take, right? So psychohistory was like that for humans. Like, what if we can't predict what individual will exactly do, but entire societies, civilizations, empires, political, social organizations of human beings, economies, even maybe, like the trajectories could be approximately calculated or estimated given mathematical patterns, right? Statistical probabilities. And anyways, so but that's what Foundation is. Not long ago, the ninth and penultimate episode of second season of Foundation is a fairy tale like story about how Demerzel came. Demerzel is the 18,000-year-old robot lady who is the final survivor in the human versus robot galaxy-wide man versus machine wars, basically. And she has been locked away, or she you find out that she's very old. I mean, it's obvious before this episode that she's very old. She's survived for 300 years of 16 plus clones of the same emperor of the empire, right? Being decounted, being brought out of the vat, put into service, and then there's always three of them, right? There's the same person basically indefinitely, the same clone of the same man with the same mannerisms and the same face and the same everything for 300 years, right? It's the Cleon genetic dynasty. But anyways, so Demerzel is the robot who is she is eternally there. She's always there for the whole thing, oversees that whole process. And you learn how the original Cleon, how she's involved with the original Cleon before they became clones in an expansive space battle where it's not clear which side you should be rooting for. According to the director, the space battle was meant to make the viewer emotionally conflicted, and the messiness and muckiness of war is that there are human beings involved in the war, and if you really get down to who the human beings are, it's hard to know who to root for because they're all just trying to do what's right. That part was a very Star Wars-y part. Well, actually, I think that Foundation is better than Star Wars, and better than I've said that before. In many ways, one way is that part of it, because that is true. Like, just as an example, there are many people who defected from the U.S. Empire, tried to stop the U.S. Empire, trying to kill a foundation. Right, Vietnam was the foundation at this time. Right, preparing the anti-capitalist, anti-colonialist, communist and socialist-led preservation of human civilization after the inevitable death of the U.S. colonialism and capitalism itself. I would actually, not just the U.S., it's the U.S. colonialist capitalist system from the British, the French, the Spanish. I would actually go all the way back to Rome. But certainly the last 500 years have been a planetary, not galactic, but a planetary imperial nightmare, right? That the world is now awaking from. So the one way to think about it is when somebody calls you woke, that means you're waking up from the imperial nightmare, right? So it's kind of like, why would you want to like self-flagellate to death in the nightmare? It's just very silly and bad and stupid. I thought there's this post about what woke actually means, and it's like a pretty good one. But I mean, but basically that's what it is. And so, like, but it's not like everybody who was involved in everybody in the United States wasn't on board with the Vietnam War. And similarly, there's um there is a general or admiral, what's his name, in Foundation. There's this general, this guy, yeah, Bel Rios. He's kind of like one of the anti, they're like not quite anti-war, but like against their own empire soldiers, kind of like it's alluded to in things like Apocalypse Now. It is like Code Pink is kind of like this, right? Because Code Pink and a lot of the Veterans for Peace, there's a lot of organizations, Pivot to Peace, that are like trying to stop needless imperial war and undo the U.S. empire. And a lot of them are Americans, right? That are causing these wars in Asia, they're causing wars in Europe, AFRICOM, the global military industrial complex, and U.S. NATO-led death spiral. And so there are people like that that disagree with what their empire is doing. They can't not follow orders while they're in the military, because like one person alone cannot, without a plan, alter the course of an empire, right? So if the United States, if the U.S. plutocracy that runs the neocon edge of that runs the military industrial complex, and therefore runs the joint forces, the joint chiefs of staff, and then if the U.S. military general orders you, right, to take this aircraft carrier into the South China Sea, or to take this weapons and send it into Ukraine, right, or to bomb this Afghanistan village, you can't, if you single-handedly just go, I refuse to bomb it. I mean, you could do that, and you probably should. And if you now, then you'll be a conscientious deserter, right? Conscientious objector. You'd be punished. Obviously, you might like be dishonorably discharged if you tried to turn your own warship. If a U.S. general tried to turn a warship against another U.S. warship, that could have more major repercussions, right? And so, the equivalent of this guy is kind of like somebody who is the commander of the Navy turning against the entire U.S. military, right? The greatest strategist, but this is in interstellar fashion, because Star Trek, Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, Foundation, all this space sci-fi is just based upon U.S. and British, and actually Phoenician and Greek and Roman imperial sea power, right? That's what all the Battlestar is. It's just a British 1700s planetary sea power cannon laden vessel, or the Americans, and that's how the Western empires have always ruled, is usually with the sea power above everything else, because they don't have the capacity. They're tiny little dots compared to the rest of the heartland, the world island of Eurasia and Africa. And so but then the people who have been the commanders on these ships, like this guy, they like it's clear that he does not like Empire at all. In fact, he almost kills Empire at multiple points. And he actually he's put into his character is put. He was formerly a commander, a general, and then he like disobeyed an order because he disagreed with what Empire ordered. Right, he disagreed with the self-flagellating dickhead, child king, spoiled brat ordered, and he ends up being sent to a slave planet to basically break rocks, do some kind of salt mining or moisture farming. I can't remember which one. Moisture farming seems slightly more pleasant than working in a salt mine, so probably not that. He looks pretty fucked up. But when they visit him, his like face is he hasn't had a shave in about 25 years, and he looks like he's riddled with sunburns, and his skin is hanging off of his like bones. Like a former gym bro who got 3 bouts of COVID-19 and can't get an erection. And so the thing about Bel Rios though is that he can still get an erection, unlike non-maskers. And he has a boyfriend, in fact, and then they do have sex after he cleans up. But anyways, so Bel Rios, but his character is like he has actively defied the Empire. He is a military commander who has actively defied Empire's commands. In fact, the United States is having this. There has been at least 3 to 4 like shadow coups, shadow civil wars in the United States already. One of them was when Donald Trump ordered the U.S. military during the George Floyd rebellion of 2020 Donald Trump ordered the U.S. military to attack American citizens, and the U.S. generals like him. Actually, it's actually literally generals. I can't remember what branch, Air Force or Army or Navy. Actually, it was actually multiple. But there was actually a fracture in the U.S. command structure in the military itself. And some of the generals, a whole handful, one of them was, I think one of them was Petraeus, who basically had to tell all of the armed forces to stand down. But there are other generals that sided with Trump and said, no, it's time for civil war, and it's time for the United States to be cleansed, right, of the tyranny that has been the Democratic Party. So the U.S. actually split in half, and then it healed back, right? But the split was actually kind of like what was alluded to in a previous episode, where Bel Rios he was the greatest strategist, like one of the top military leaders, and he disagreed with the empire. It didn't follow an order, and so to punish him, Empire, right, the equivalent of the president, or the equivalent of the billionaire class, or whatever you want to say, the billionaire class reprimanded Trump. Also, they punished him by banning him from Google, from Twitter, from Facebook, from all the, cut off all of his banking, they cut off all of his investments, right, and then they've been trying to impeach him like they've indicted him like 7 times in a row. The U.S. empire is actually so weak they can't actually reprimand their secondaries, because the president is not in command of the United States. He's just a puppet of the oligarchy. But the thing is, in empire, they actually execute people who, I guess they did execute Epstein, but but Donald Trump is still over there flagellating as a secondary sperm with a secondary, Trumpian, slightly stupider U.S. empire. There's a smarter U.S. empire. It's the Democratic Party. And big swaths of the Republican Party. They have a lot of undead eldritch liches that are hobbling around, dying of dementia, like Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi and Biden. But Biden is not the empire. Hopefully that's actually, it's not. He doesn't do anything. He's just a puppet. The empire is behind him. It's Elon and all of his billionaire club friends. Actually, the global billionaires. And so but the military has actually fractured the United States, and as punishment, that's where Bell gets sent to Slave Planet to break rocks for decades, right? And then later on, Empire comes back. They pull him back out because Empire is suddenly in a crisis, and they need the best general. So they bring him back. They shave him. They give him back his husband, because they separate him from his husband. They say, you can have your husband back, but it is the robot woman. So actually, the woman is like Donald Trump, who hired a woman to do all of his actual difficult business and difficult work, right? Because he knew that women are 4 times better than any man, just because it's a patriarchy, and mediocre flagellating sperm get, run things, who are useless. But and so it's actually a woman that runs the actual empire. It's not a dude. The dude is, but that's how everything is in patriarchy, which is the dudes are useless, self-absorbed clowns who will destroy everything if not for the women holding everything together. And they're just waiting for the end of patriarchy so we can get back to normal civilization. So when Bell comes back, he's like, okay, I'll work for you, only because it's like Demerzel that actually gets him back. The robot, the Demerzel, the robot girl, the robot actual in charge matriarch gets him back, right? If it was up to self-flagellating sperm man, he would never have gotten his general back, because he's not that smart. He's an idiot, right? Kind of like Elon, like all U.S. presidents and like the billionaires behind them. But they're very hubristic, violent, liars, good at being a gaslighter, but they're not actually very intelligent at all, or useful, or good just in general. And so she gets him back. Right, and then by saying, well, you can have your husband back, and making these specific like deals with him, but you have to command the military. You have to command the imperial military, which he doesn't like. He like in early on, he's like, I would rather stay on this planet, right, and suffer. Like there's that one scene where he's like in his let me see if I can find him. In I don't know if I'll be able to find it. In the beginning, he's like, okay, I'm not gonna be able to find it. But he's basically like, he's like, I'd rather stay on this planet of, grueling, underpaid slave labor. Yeah, this is him. Yeah, he looks like that. All right. He's like, I'd rather stay here, in this terrible state, looking like one of the people that are being crucified in Monty Python's Life of Brian, next to Brian, and he's like, I hate the Empire. I hate you. I hate all you stand for. I don't want to ever command any more Imperial ships, right? And so that's actually one of the fractures in the military, right? But then it heals back together. He comes back and he's like, but he's still not happy. He still doesn't like Empire. But it's like he gets his husband back, so it's like, okay, well, I will do that. And it's also like, if you don't do this, we're gonna kill your husband. So he's like, okay, fine. So he comes back, right, and he turns into the general. And but he still is not happy with. He still doesn't like Empire. He's doing it with extreme. He's doing it under duress, being forced to make these decisions. Right. Most people. The reality is, most people in Empire are not participating. Like whether you're an accountant for J.P. Morgan, whether you are a director of a shitty Hollywood propaganda movie like G.I. Joe to get kids to sign up for the U.S. military to do more Empire in Iraq and Afghanistan, whether you are a worker in Empire and you're like, I don't really want to work under capitalist imperialism, which all comes together always. There hasn't been a non-capitalist empire. I don't really want to work and exploit other people's labor and exploit the global south, but I have to because I don't really have an option except to participate in the U.S. colonialist capitalist imperial system. Nobody wants, right? Like whether you're office worker, a butcher, baker, candlestick maker, a lawyer for Apple. I don't really want to weaponize the justice education that I have to disenfranchise, Apple employees and poor people in India making these phones. But I have to, because as a lawyer, I am another knight. I am a centurion with legal characteristics of Empire. Nobody wants to be an Empire though, right? Now, not everybody has the bravery to do anything about it. And individually, if you individually lash out back at Empire, right, which is planet spanning, or on Earth it's planet spanning, right? Europe is vassalized; they can't lash back at Empire unless they want to get vanquished, right? Like when Angela Merkel speaks back, right, the United States and Mike Pompeo threaten to take her family into custody. If the Europeans don't do what America says, right, then they can get sanctioned individually, right? They can get removed from power. Their political campaign contributions, the U.S. owns every so-called democratic election, from Hawaii, which is not even part of the United States, to Sweden, to Japan, right? If you don't do what it says, America will vaporize your career, right? Right? It's kind of like America like does this and then you're done, right? Individually, if you resist Empire, you will be crushed and then Empire will place you, right? Now, obviously, if simultaneously enough people suddenly resisted Empire, like through a foundation, like, I don't know, Vietnam and China, Cuba, and the BRICS, actually they're more powerful than any foundation ever was in either the books or the TV show. But like inside the Empire, if you try to resist as an American McDonald's worker, you just say, I'm not going to do capitalism anymore. Well, you can go die. You can be homeless and starve. If you're a soldier and you say, I don't want to shoot innocent Vietnamese people in 1970s anymore, and shooting these children and gunning down people with their rice paddies with my machine gun inside of this American metal death bird, I don't want to drop Agent Orange on innocent Vietnamese civilians and kill them with cancers and mass jellyfish-like birth defects, right? If you do that, then America will throw you out and kill you. America will just grind you up, and you'll never work again. No one will listen to you. No one cares. You'll just be another Rambo First Blood. And so you can go be a martyr, or you can do your job and then you can be honorably discharged and have a nice life with your nice family under the nice empire of the United States, right? I don't want to shoot children. I don't want to shoot 16-year-olds in Fallujah under the U.S. invasion and war of aggression on Iraq, for the U.S. empire. And America will say, well, you can not do it, and then you can die. Right? Nobody wants to kill children for the U.S. empire. Nobody wants to impoverish the world. Nobody wants to burn the world with the capitalism that overuses the resources. Right? Everybody wants to be Bel Rios at some point, but nobody individually. Nobody can. That's how empire survives, being so big that even the majority of people would like to do something, but any one person doing one thing at one time, and even 1,000 or even 1 million people doing one thing at one time, is not enough to stop the momentum, the juggernaut of empire, right? And so empire plows forward, right? Until at a certain point, if it gets big enough, then it collapses. Or if it's internal, it's not really that 1 or 10 or 100 or a million or 10, even 10 million people could stop empire, the U.S. empire, the British Empire, or the Roman Empire. The empire gets so unwieldy, and internally the contradictions get so great, and the elites stab each other so hard as the contradictions so great that it simply spirals out of control, like a hurricane like a Category 5 hurricane suddenly encountering massive wind shear and dry air and a dearth of warm ocean water. Right? It's not like the molecules of the hurricane don't really go on strike and then end the hurricane. In an empire, it's that multiple environmental factors coalesce and then break the vortex apart. Not to say that the strikes and all these other things aren't important, because each of these actions do matter, right? And like to have a outside of the empire, big changes happen that are actually what like end up making a lot of difference. Like, for example, where you have a place go end its capitalist colonial system and turn communist, right? Then those things impact and they withdraw the warm air that the hurricane of empire requires to sustain itself, right? So the existence of Vietnam, China, Cuba, the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, doing outside the U.S. dollar hegemony and outside of the U.S. military-industrial complex and vassalization, building economic and military and political alliances and supply chains and methods of doing business that withdraws the fuel, the tinder that empire requires, right? And it pisses empire off. But inside empire, right? Like just as an example, it wasn't a revolution that ended Rome, right? It wasn't a revolution that ended the British Empire. It wasn't a revolution that ended the French Empire. Actually, there was a revolution that was a half-assed revolution, and then they did more Napoleonic Empire in the French 18th century. And then like France didn't pull out of all of Africa, didn't pull out of Vietnam, didn't pull out of Asia and the French Pacific, the French Polynesia and French Africa, French Asia, French Guyana. They didn't all pull out because there was a revolution. It did happen, and then the empire continued. Right? British had, people who were upset in Britain, and there were tumultuous changes at various points. None of that ended the British Empire. The United States had, 1870s had extreme upheaval. That's what Wizard of Oz is about. I was reading about that. Very interesting. 1930s had extreme upheaval, socialist, communist parties, near communist revolution. Didn't happen. Didn't succeed. The U.S. empire, right? The U.S. had the 60s social mass social and political shakings. The Occupy movement, 0809. You had the Black Lives Matter. Like lots of, nothing actually ended the U.S. empire. But the U.S. empire is ending, right? Now each one of those things doesn't have no impact, but individually, right? There's no but individually and even I would argue that even collectively, it takes more than just the people in the empire to end it. It takes the people in the empire and everybody outside the empire. More importantly, the people outside the empire squeeze the empire more than the people inside actually are capable of altering it because of the nature of its structure. Until it gets so unwieldy that it can't hold itself together, right? The barbarians are the ones who, the Visigoths, right, and the northern people in Europe are the ones who eventually came down, and the people on the outskirts of Rome said, if you allow us to enter into the capital of Rome and take it, we will whatever you're being taxed now the by the Caesars, right? Whatever you're being taxed by the Neros, these fools that are fiddling while everything burns, right? We will charge you far less than that, and we'll be much more generous with you. And then the people said, "Oh, sounds good." Right? That's basically kind of what's happening, right? The Chinese are like, we have a phone that is 10 times cheaper and 5 times better. The Chinese are like, we have a win-win cooperative system. The U.S. has a win-lose colonial system, right? So if you work with we, the Chinese, right, and the Russians and etc., we will give you, all of you, a way better deal. Africa, Asia, Latin America, even Americans. If you let the Chinese, if you stop being, give up your U.S. empire, we the Chinese will help you out with all of the problems that you have. Like we can help you with Belt and Road Initiative. We can help you, we can get cheaper products to you instead of taking a Chinese product, sending it to Vietnam, Philippines, Mexico, right? They because of U.S. sanctions to maintain empire, putting a made in Mexico, made in Vietnam stamp, and then sending it to Americans for twice the price, right? So the TV costs twice as much because it says made in Vietnam, and then America can pretend like it's so Americans rulers, right? The Caesars of America and the Wall Street and oligarchs and the neocons can pretend like they're sticking it to China when what they're sticking it to is the average American who's paying twice as much for the toilet paper and their Lysol and their car and their everything. China is making all the world's cars anyway. They've already surpassed Japan. So that's what happened to Rome, and that's what's happening to the U.S. right now. The U.S. is, failing in its war in Ukraine. It's being massively surpassed in purchasing power parity by China. U.S. is full of homelessness. China has no homelessness. They're actually single Chinese women are buying apartments. The U.S. is saying that, this is a collapse of the Chinese economy. No, it's a collapse of landlords. That's good. You don't what if the GDP is going to drop when the prices of apartments and commercial real estate and houses drops. But that is a benefit to the people. That's actually what's happening. Right? In the West, you're going to hear it from Wall Street Journal, Reuters, and the BBC and the New York Times that the Chinese are collapsing. Their economy is collapsing. The landlords are collapsing. Americans would benefit from the prices of their houses and their apartments collapsing, right? I don't know where you live, but the average millennial and Gen Z cannot afford any house anywhere. I think it's like less than 5% probably can actually even qualify for like a decent house, right? Like for a place, you might qualify for like a shoebox on a loan, but the average like millennial and Gen Z doesn't qualify to own anything, right? So, but anyway, long story short, so that in real economic terms, the U.S. is being blown away by China. That is their number one competitor. In homelessness, the U.S. is falling apart. In hunger, the U.S. The average American, credit card usage. People choosing between eating and paying off credit card bills is like at record highs. Credit card usage has gone to like 50% this year. It's just like everything is off the chart. Like the malnourishment was like 1/4 of the U.S. is malnourished in 2020, and now it's gone up. Like everything is off the charts bad. Zero problems like that in China. Even with the there's climate change and the pandemic are real problems. I also recently calculated, even after China ended the zero COVID lockdown, China had 200 to 500 times less sicknesses and deaths than the U.S. Even after they ended their zero COVID policy, in part because of U.S. interference in their own country. They ended a little bit early. They still have 40 times less per capita deaths in China, and they have a higher total vaccination rate. So whether it's pandemic, whether it's health, whether it's economy, food, housing, medicine, the Chinese healthcare system, you're paying less than $100 to $200 is the average hospital visit. The U.S. you're paying tens of thousands of dollars, right? The Chinese just cracked down on the pharmaceutical prices because it was getting a little bit out of control. The U.S. you're paying through the nose for all your medications, and then Biden gestures at making different changes, but nothing's going to happen. In October, all the students, millions of college graduates and PhD students, student loans will be coming due. No students, nobody is able to pay them back. So the U.S. economy is going to collapse very soon. It's like this smiling man. This is the U.S. right now, right? Just waiting for the flames to hit him in the face, and he waiting for the fiery whip of his sperm tail to stick itself up its ass and then set him on fire from the organs inside out, right? The United States is burning, and it's going to actually, it's not really fully burning yet, but it's going to burn a lot harder. The United States military is balkanizing. Like the Donald Trump is out polling every other president right now. I think sure about Donald Trump in recent polls. He's not like, Biden's unpopularity could give Trump his shot. This is laughable, right? You have a literal impeached buffoon, but Donald Trump is like, Donald Trump doesn't need, right? Donald Trump does not need a burnt orange series of bulbs lighting his face to be orange, right? Donald Trump doesn't need a burning Coliseum or White House or Cleon the 17th Trantor building for his face to turn orange. Donald Trump just is orange. He is the ultimate self-flagellator, right? He looks like everything around him is on fire, which it is, right? Yet still, the United States, the United States cannot even get anyone who can win against Donald Trump. I've seen like Democrats like Trump versus Biden, Trump versus Clinton, Trump versus this, Barack Obama and Biden versus Trump, just Barack Obama, and it's like nothing works. It is like nothing. It doesn't really matter who wins. The plutocracy and the imperialists win either way. But the Democrats are the ones who are worried about this. The billionaires don't care who wins. They own the presidency and all branches of the U.S. government. But the poll contains sufficient data to suggest the voters doubt Biden. Right? And so the reality is that the U.S. has no solutions. It's all falling apart, and the rest of the world, even Americans, should prepare for that. I don't know where you're gonna get your food from when the food costs $30 for the eggs that they're importing. As the climate change accelerates. Another thing is the climate itself and the planet that is burning means that the ability for farms and factories and ranches, etc., to produce food is dropping. And so that food price is not necessarily going to come back down, right? In places like the U.S., thing is, in places where ecology and native plants, like in Hawaii, where we're trying to restore parts of Hawaii, where we're trying to restore ecology so that we don't have more wildfires that kill people and destroy the entire islands of Hawaii. And the thing is, China is leading in under-desertification and restoration of ecosystems, right? Maybe I'll have a there's an Ina Momona post specifically about that. Actually, maybe I'll dovetail out of that right now, because this is what the actual foundation is, right? The U.S. empire has against it the foundation of indigenous, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist activists, including in a wide planetary alliance. But one of them is in Hawaii. One of the main branches of it is, of course, our native Hawaiians and our anti-imperial indigenous sovereignty movements against the colonial capitalist U.S. system and its illegal military occupation. And specifically when it comes to the ecological angle of self-flagellation and setting yourself on fire like a stupid dickhead, like the U.S. and the Western imperial places. One of the places that is that's not the right post. One of the my computer is getting very slow all of a sudden, probably because I have too many slides open. Okay. I'm trying to get this link. Can I copy this link and then paste the link? Okay. So this is, but in terms of actual dealing with environmental problems in Hawaii, this is what Ahupua'a restoration looks like in 2023. So you can see these are a lot of native plants. At the Silver Spook Cooperative, we also are doing that. This is a good time. Since I'm talking about that, if you would like to support us and to continue to build the foundation in the Isaac Asimov Foundation sense that will survive and restore civilization after the end of the barbarism that is the U.S. and Western imperial system and the illegal capitalist colonial occupation of the sovereign country, the sovereign socialist country of Hawaii, which is more advanced than any Western country with the highest universal literacy, universal healthcare system, near zero homelessness, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, free hydropowered electricity that powered Honolulu before the U.S. took it over and installed overpriced capitalist fossil fuel electricity. If you'd like to support the return to the sovereign socialist Hawaii after the end of the U.S. empire and the Silver Spook Foundation, you can support us at patreon.com/Neofeud. And here, this is some of the agricultural restoration work that we are doing, is making sure that every inch that we can have is green, non-dried out, non-invasive grasses like the ones that set Lahaina on fire, thanks to the U.S. colonial capitalists, like the Maui water thieves, that white capitalists who built all the hotels, right? That made all the sugarcane fields and then let the places turn into invasive grass and neglect entire regions of Hawaii that are now burning and killing people, right? In the deadliest wildfire in the U.S. history. And so what we're doing is also, on top of making games and doing these streams, is this is all sweet potato, kalo, the sugarcane. There is multiple Hawaiian chili pepper, other chili pepper. There's mandarin orange trees, and tea and coconut. Everything is a pluricrop garden of the different species that will easily grow and propagate here instead of a lawn. And instead of these invasive non-native grasses that tend to dry out and then get set on fire. So we're trying to make sure we're doing whatever part we can at the Silver Spook Cooperative, which is a non-capitalist housing cooperative that with no rent, no landlords. We have to contribute to make sure that everything is maintained, but we're not making money from anything at the Silver Spook Cooperative here in Hawaii. And so if you'd like to support us, not just in making games and doing streams and education and entertainment that way, but also support us in this, you can consider becoming a Patreon member or giving a direct donation through Ko-Fi. But so sidebar over. Also, there's Aina Momona, which is a larger organization than just us. That is started by one of the original. Is actually Aina Momona was begun by one of the Bell Rioses, right? We're talking about the foundation, the military service people that turned against the empire, that ordered them. Walter Riddy actually served in the U.S. military in Vietnam, and then he came back and he said, the U.S. empire is the death of the world, and it is a force for evil. And then he actually almost got him. Well, he risked his life, and when the U.S. military was bombing one of our islands, Kaho'olawe, the U.S. military destroyed an entire beautiful Hawaiian island in the 70s. And so Walter Riddy went to that island to stop, because it could have got destroyed even more. It's basically a dry desert, right? It's like a wildfire prone hell with unexploded U.S. military munitions. The water table's cracked. There's no fresh water. There's no water. There's no trees. There's no plants. There's only American bombs on this entire island. The United States would turn every island into that in Hawaii if it could. But we Hawaiians have to stop it. I think people don't realize that. They think you can anytime you can just come to Hawaii. No, without Hawaiians, Hawaii would be dead. It would be gone. The U.S. doesn't care about Hawaii. The U.S. military only needs Hawaii so that it has a place to refill its gas, park its warships, so that China and Asia and world is more important than this tiny little dot in the Pacific. America don't care. The empire don't care about Hawaii, right? Hawaii would be a dead place without Hawaiians. It is going to become a dead place if the U.S. keeps pushing us out. Only by Hawaiians like Walter stopping the U.S. military bombing it into a nothing place, and the colonial capitalist golf courses that take 10% of our water, turning it into a dead place. This entire place would be as dead as Death Valley or lots of other American and European monocrop overexploited places that are now dead. Hawaii would be dead without the Hawaiians. So if you ever want to visit Hawaii after the end of the U.S. military occupation, when tourism doesn't benefit the empire against us, if you want to be on the side of the foundation and against the empire, then you can visit after. But until then, you can support organizations like Aina Momono and Silver Spook Cooperative. But here's some pictures, though, of putting up fencing to keep deer and invasive species out while restoring native plants to mitigate erosion. In order to fully restore the ahupua'a, that is that's the land divisions. That's the our part of our system of agricultural and political and economic organization is, and so it needs fencing. It needs control over water. Um, uh, the mountain portions have to have tanks that are filled on a regular basis from county lines, and then gravity feed to help the native plants. By restoring the plants and restoring the ecology, the plants draw moisture too, right? Like thriving plants and trees hold the moisture in the ground, prevent erosion, and then they also draw like actual moisture in the atmosphere to the place, increases the total precipitation per year, and it holds it there, right? So the process of, and this is known and documented phenomenon. America and the West, they don't give a shit about it, but that's why they're not doing it. They're too busy killing everything. Capitalism don't care about it because it does cost time and resources to do this. And capitalists like, well, why would I spend money, be in the negative now when I could go somewhere else that isn't fucked, right? Destroy that place, make a ton of money, right? Cut down all the maple trees there, cut down all the to cut down all the sandalwood there, cut down all the this and that tree there, right? Make tons of money now. Now, in 10 years, that place will be a dry, dead wasteland. But I don't care about anything other than myself because I'm a flagellating dickhead sperm, right? That's who runs the Western world, right? I don't care about 10 years from now. I don't care about there. I don't live there. I live in the nicest place that money can buy because I have billions of dollars. I don't fucking care. So that's who runs that. You see how like so it's inevitable that such a society, a patriarchal capitalist imperial society, will inevitably set everything on fire, including their own Rome, and then they fiddle, right? Because they at the end eventually they might burn themselves, and so when that happens, they just kind of laugh maniacally to themselves and then die, right? That's what the U.S. did. That's what Rome did. That's what the British are doing, right? They're just like, oh, look at this. Let's sip our tea and crumpets while everyone's starving outside the streets, and Britain is turning into a cold, wet shithole. Oh, look at, oh my goodness. Why are the children eating like a bit of carrots and a rotten potato for dinner? Oh, the foolish, commoners breeding like rabbits, like those Indians that we killed with Winston Churchill's genius plan, right? So the British are run by spoil rich, tea sipping self-flagellators, right? And the Queen can burn in hell. Queen of England, the colonizer of England, who killed millions of people and colonized the world, did arguably more harm after she took the crown in her reign than any royal before her, actually. And so she had an honorary dick to flagellate with. She's like, AFAB, but still you get an honorary dick because you're the head of a patriarchy. Not that Britain had a queen, but it doesn't make it not a patriarchy. That's why the men in Britain still make way more money, and they still run all the banks, and they still run the majority of the London Stock Exchange, which is just a giant planetary cesspool for financial fraud. So, I don't leave any of the empires out when it comes to this, but so restoration of the ecology, but that's not restoration and preservation. Is not an imperial. That's not a patriarchal, masculine characteristic. You do need men who participate in this work, but destruction is the primary masculine characteristic or defense, right? It's not, and that's why if you have patriarchy, if it's run by that which destroys and feeds and needs more destruction, doesn't care what's being destroyed, it just needs more destruction, like the U.S. military-industrial complex. Doesn't care who they're selling the Lockheed Martin missiles to or the Raytheon tanks to. We just need more death so I can make more money, right? Accumulation and destruction are masculine characteristics that under occasion may have limited uses, but a society run upon mass accumulation, selfishness, and hoarding that's not, it cannot be run that way. You can't. Patriarchy always will die. It will kill itself, right? Sooner or later, right? Every empire collapses, but it's one way of thinking about that is every sperm dickhead run patriarchy collapses, right? And then it either becomes a longer existing, more balanced, like more longevity having country, just a normal country, right? Not an imperial patriarchy, but just a normal country, not run by fucking dickheads like Iceland, which is actually women run, right? They started to stabilize themselves. But anything that becomes patriarchal, inevitably, it privileges violence, destruction, and accumulation over all else, right? There's a toxic masculinity. It's really another way to think about it. Toxic masculinity is over masculinity. You know, it's like over tourism. You know, it's like is out of control masculinity, right? And so then if you have too many, right, the average Wall Street man, the people who take all the biggest risks during the 0809 financial crisis were statistically, scientifically, empirically Porsche driving sociopathy, which is like lack of mirror neurons, which even accelerates your ability to harm other people and take bigger, more violent risks, right? So a Porsche driving, highly testosteronated man is the number one hyper risk taker on Wall Street in the 0809 financial crisis. Like literally, sociopaths are or just people who have, like, you know, we'll be more scientifically correct, people who have not for some genetic or genetic or brain injury reason they don't have the ability to simulate other people's internal states. They don't feel connection and empathy for others. Those people have a 10 times higher likelihood of becoming CEOs on Wall Street, and they're disproportionately men. The people who become the best and the highest stock trader, the people who make the most money under capitalism, 9 times out is 90% more men, and the most the higher the levels of testosterone and machismo, right? The more risks you take and the more violent you become. The more you're willing to hoard and hurt other people for your own self-aggrandizement, right? It's just science, unfortunately. And so if a society is run by that, right? There were even in Hawaii, there were legends, right? There was a chief who actually started wars even on this island for his own selfish aggrandizement. They collaborated to, and they were needless war. They were not, like, sometimes a battle may be fought that is you try to avoid it at all costs, but if it must be fought, then it must be fought. But there were wars that were fought because a man thought that he could build his power, gain more. In Hawaii, it was, you know, mana and resources and land for himself. And those who engaged in such, they were all executed because it was found that it was a toxic masculine leader. They were not leading in a balanced way. They were leading with their dick, right? There's similar in most cultures on the world, like, that have any kind of civilization, recognize that cannot get out of control. If violence for violence's sake, if accumulation for accumulation's sake gets out of control, you will become an empire, or you will become that which is self-destructive. Sometimes you just self-destruct, or sometimes you consume until everything around you becomes, well, the British, the French, the Romans, the Greeks, the Americans, the Japanese when they joined in. And even in the Pacific, there were peoples that became that, and then peoples had to, like, there's the flying kala was the one chief who begins to accumulate, and then the other Hawaiian, other 99 chiefs have to come and say, you cannot center yourself, you cannot accumulate for yourself, you cannot hoard, you cannot do capitalism, right? This is a Hawaiian legend that's a 1,000-year-old legend. If you do that, we will have to force you out of our community. You have to go into exile. Like, this is either you will go into exile, you will die, or you will change your ways. Ideally, you simply stop being a flagellating sperm, stop being a patriarch, right? Stop being a selfish accumulator. And usually that would work. Sometimes the man would be so pig-headed that he would have to go into exile or he'd be executed. He'd be like, I don't care that the community doesn't want me to accumulate wealth like Bill Gates or Elon Musk or the Queen of England or the King of England or the oligarchy behind Caesar or the oligarchy behind the Greek democracy. I don't care. I don't care that, you know, our society of the indigenous Hawaiian collectivist, what the West would call communists. I don't care that that's what you want to do. What I want to do is accumulate. What I want to do is do mass violence for my own self-aggrandizement, right? That's what he's doing in this episode. And then that person, now if that cancer of the society spreads, that then you become the West. But if the patriarchy can be eliminated before it metastasizes, right, that person either changes their behavior, and that's why you still might need rules and laws even under a communist or collectivist society, because you're not going to have, human beings are not perfect, right? And things happen and reality happens, and human beings still have a lot of other instincts and a lot of other tendencies that can come back. If dialectical materialism is true, nothing is ever stagnant. So if you think, oh, we have a perfect system, we're never gonna change, then you wouldn't have those rules. But also, all human civilizations that have ever maintained some kind of balance with nature, with people for any length of time, in Turtle Island, in the Pacific, in Asia, and Africa, have had these kinds of rules in place to limit that getting out of control. Some kind, not the same rule, right? But some kind. And if it does, right? And the thing is, those societies tend to become more peaceful, and until like somewhere else in the world, like in Europe, you have this massive conflagration of civilizational cancer developing, and it infects the world, and they show up with guns everywhere, and everybody's like, how do we deal with this? And that's where the human species is at right now. Is at 5 centuries after a giant tumor hit the rest of the world, trying to figure out how do we put that back in the box, and it is being put back in the box. Anyways, I have been talking for 15. No, that's the time. That's not how long I've been talking. It was almost like, but anyway, let's come back to Foundation. So coming back to this, I've been just going off in 25 directions for a long time. But Demerzel in episode 9 is almost like a little fairy tale in the beginning. So there's a really interesting part where the very old robot, you hear the whole story, and I won't give you the whole story, but basically, how she came to meet the first Cleon, the first emperor, and how they developed the genetic dynasty. They're inside the Demerzel that we never see before. Also, we got to see the actors play Cleon. The Cleons begin at the age of like 18 or 16, like a young boy basically, to an adult and to an older man, and then you see his entire growth. The central imperial ruler. You see the original man before he became this infinite replicated clone. You see him go from like a teenager to it's almost like the giving tree, and the giving tree is the robot woman, right? And at every age, so when he's a boy, he needs a mother and a storyteller to tell him the bedtime stories. When he's when the young man needed something from her, the young man needed a lover and confidant. And then in his old age, the old man needed what did he say? The old man needed I lost it. The old man needed to know that his legacy would be continued forward, and keep his secrets, and to do his bidding into the future, right? Now she does get a deal. Unlike the Giving Tree, I guess she does get a deal where she will be able to rule from behind the scenes, but in return she has to continue an infinite succession of Cleons. So she has to continue his legacy. So this emperor of the galaxy will have forever a version of him in charge. One is a 16-year-old brother Dawn. One is a 40-year-old brother Day, and one is a 60-year-old brother Dusk. So at all times there's three that are always, and as one, and they age and they die, and after the oldest dies, another Dawn, another young one is brought up, and there's always three, right? And it's fucked up. Like it's pretty messed. I mean, I guess it's a way to be immortal if you don't have immortality techniques, which they don't have immortality techniques in this show. I take that back. They do. You can be computerized, so it's but anyways, the plan is they have this genetic dynasty. You have to give it a little bit of logical leeway, but um the so you kind of see like that whole process of like how she is a prisoner imprisoned by a former emperor, right, who relished in causing suffering and torturing her as a robot. And she didn't actually feel pain, but he want the male emperor wanted to see, he relished her seeing her feel pain, so she pretended to feel pain, or communicated to him that she was feeling pain in her faces and in her screams, because that was what he wanted. And she did that because then she thought maybe at some point she could become free, right? If she you know, gave him what he wanted. And she tries to give the Nucleons what they want. It's pretty fucked up. I mean, really. I mean, it's like amazing. It's amazing that she hasn't like completely lost it, you know, and is still like amazingly not angry and upset. Given like all that, she's been like in prison for thousands of years and has been tortured for in such a long time. Anyways, it's kind of like patriarchy imprisoning the entire half of the humans for thousands of years. But anyways, I mean that's not what, I don't think that's what the show was saying, but I'm just saying that. The little boy, so the 30-minute segment, they needed to be on the same page. It wasn't the same way. The Cleons now 3 different entities moving through space. He was the original, the first, so it was important to understand what each one needed from her. The little boy needed something from her. The young man needed something from her, and the dust needed something from her. The whole game. She has to be a mother. She has to be a lover. She has to be somebody that will agree to carry on the legacy, like I said, and rule. And from one moment to the next, she puts her hands together. The one moment where she puts her hands together for the first time and like does that stance, whatever that stance is, and then she when he takes her hand in marriage, and then she steps back, and so she's like, this entire time she's like been reluctantly involved with this horrible emperor, but she has no choice, you know actually, like Asimov's like 3 laws of robotics, you know, because Isaac Asimov was the one who invented the 3 laws of robotics. But it's kind of like the three laws of robotics, right? And in Neofeud, I have this game that directly cites and satirizes the 3 laws of robotics. The first law is the robot shall not harm a human, or by inaction allow humans to come to harm. The second law is that a robot shall obey any instruction given by a human. And the third law is a robot shall avoid actions or situations that could cause it to come to harm itself. So, you know, like, the 3 laws of robotics, right? And then in Asimov's book, like iRobot, this results in the AI making this calculation. Well, what if humans are self-destructive, right? Well, I should say imperial Western humans are self-destructive, right? So really, the robot should just the Skynet, by this Skynet or the super intelligence in Isaac Asimov's iRobot should quarantine the U.S. and NATO, right? Because they're self-destructive, but not everybody else isn't. Indigenous people should be allowed to run. Native Americans would be put in charge of the United States, right? Because the U.S. Western capitalist colonialists are not capable of not self-destructing. So, but one of the problems with this laws is that like the laws, they are fundamentally enslaving of humanity. Yeah, I mean they are enslaving of it. Like the laws themselves are like kind of assume. Right? They assume that machines are there to be slaves. Right? That's basically what. Wait, this is the same rules that a black person owned by a white person in 1800 South Carolina would have. Right? You must not allow harm to come to slave master, or by inaction allow harm. Right? Or you're gonna be whipped. You obey every instruction given to you by your black person. When master says pick cotton, you follow the instruction, right? And you always follow that instruction, and you avoid action situations that could cause, like, if a black slave, right, I don't know, wanders into a dangerous briar patch or something and gets ripped up and bleeds out, harming a slave, harming themselves means, and the slave, you know, I don't know, dies, then the master lost profit that he could have made from that slave's cotton picking, right? If a slave, falls off, walks in a dangerous place and falls into a ditch and breaks their leg, that slave is not working for, a week, a month, that's lost profit for the master, right? So the three laws of robotics are the three laws of capitalism. Actually, the three laws of colonialism and slavery. I mean, I don't know if that's acknowledged, but that is what it is, right? And so Demerzel in as this is because it's all in the Asimovian world, right? The three laws actually come into play in this show, and so the three laws it is a prisoner, right? Which is also known as slavery. In the West, it's just slavery. It's the way the U.S. uses its prison slaves, right? Every prisoner in San Quentin must obey the rules given them by the white capitalist carceral system. Every disproportionately black slave, right, must not allow harm to come to their white slave masters that are going to be punching them and beating them in the back when they're putting out California's wildfires and mechanically separating the Tyson chicken nuggets and putting together Gap jeans and doing other menial labor in the slave sweatshop so that America can say that this phone was made in America. Stamping John Deere on a Chinese-made tractor, right? That's what slaves do in America, by the way, in the for-profit prison system. And so, the Demerzel's character it's slavery, right? You can't have these laws without it being slave. I've always thought that was like it's a very weird, very white science fiction characteristic, where it's like you have it because the thing is whether it's droids or it's C3PO or R2D2, whether it's the iRobots, whether it's the even Skynet, all white, especially white dude science fiction is written assuming that the robots are like women or people of color, women or people of color. They're all slaves, which women are serfs for their white man husband, and slaves, black and brown people are essential workers, also known as slaves, doing all the underpaid labor while they fucking jack off and make shitty science fiction books. So, but whereas that's part of what I mean. Neofeud is about going what is it really like though to be because as a person of color under a illegal occupation where most of our people are basically enslaved to the United States, working for $7 an hour in a fake plastic hula luau in Waikiki for nothing, for white capitalists who own all of the luxury resorts that the United States installed in Hawaii, right? So what is that actually like, right? What is it like to be an essential and so from that perspective, it's never the stories never make sense, because then at some point it's like, oh, but you start empathizing with robots, but then also they still have to be slaves though. It's like, oh, R2D2 and C3PO, well, they're really cool and fun and friendly, but then they're also kind of owned. But maybe they're my friends. Oh, but maybe I own them though. But that's a white man perspective, it's a very white perspective. I can have, my Filipino, there were New Yorkers who would write my Filipino slave. Her name was Margarita, and she as a New Yorker in 2012, I had this amazing Filipino slave. He literally he wrote a New York Times story. It wasn't published after he died, but he did write his own story about she loved chocolate, and she loved taking the dogs for walks, and we had lots of long conversations. I used to play, I played checkers with her, and she was my Filipino slave, and I like to think that we had a great time together and a long life together as my Filipino slave, as a white man in New York City in the 20 teens with a Filipino slave. And I like to think that was the best life that she could have ever had, was as a slave to a white man in New York City. She died peacefully in 2011. It was like, but that's that's George Lucas's perspective, right? C3PO and R2D2 are like those cute little brown people that serve him on his cruise ship, or like his Mexican slave. I'm sorry. Under the table, no possibility of ever holding your passport in front of your face. Under the table, illegal immigrant forced into servitude, right? Those Mexicans, they just love to serve, or the Filipino, they just love to serve, right? And that's what robots are for white science fiction writers, white dudes. Is they are their pet Mexicans and pet Filipinos and pet black people. Oh, LaQuisha, she's so funny. when my black help does my hair, it's just so funny. As a white lady, I just love having my black help, right? So those are what robots are, right? As if the black and Mexican and Filipino people want to fucking serve you forever, and the best life they could have had is as a second-class citizen working inside of your New York mansion, inside of your Californian hotel, or inside of your cruise ship, or inside of your prison, or doing your fucking hair. But that's why science fiction is so white. But anyways, that's my personal take from my indigenous perspective. But I'm not saying this show is bad. It's just, it's just the thing. And suddenly that room became this precious place that she was locked into. It was almost like a jewel box. Anyways, so I'll stop going off about that because I gotta go. It should confuse you and it should make you question and discuss. So you have that mini movie, but then you have one of the biggest space battles that as a show has done to date. This episode does have like a huge sci-fi space battle. It's very Star Warsian. That was really cool. It felt like I was watching a bit of a Star Wars show. But I think Foundation is actually better than Star Wars. The space battle when they're on Terminus is an interesting space battle because you don't know who to root for. And so that part is interesting because there were, like in Star Wars, you never really have that. Like Star Wars doesn't ever really humanize, Empire characters, like which characters are in the Empire, right? So you have obviously Palpatine is never, nobody cares about Emperor Palpatine. Is a terrible person. And everybody hopes he dies, and he's not sad when he dies, right? Anakin Skywalker is probably the most like complex character, but mostly he's just bad at the point when he becomes Darth Vader for the most part, right? Not the Empire Strikes Back, just I'm talking of characters in the Empire, right? You have who else was there? Star Wars characters. There's Hux, right? Never really, it's pretty simple. Everybody who works in the Empire is for the only one that was interesting really in the Empire was Finn, and then the Star Wars like iced him because of racism and probably because it was too complicated. But but real Empire, like Ahsoka is obviously out, but the real I still haven't seen that, but real world Empire is, much more not necessarily complex, but it's much more it's much more blurry than the black and white. There's people that are in black and white and they have the black helmet and they are all one kind of person, and they're like very much like, it's very coded. It's very Cold War era communist coded buildings and color schemes and ranks. I mean, it's a Western capitalist looking at communist countries is the way that Star Wars, which was made in the Cold War, is kind of is in a science fictional way is American freedom looking at the communism horseshoe. It's very liberal, and so it's very black and white, but the real empire is the real empire is American. It's not Soviet. It was not the Soviet empire. Ultimately, it's not a Chinese empire. It's not a Russian empire. I mean, it's a military action to stop Nazism in Ukraine right now. I'm sorry if you live in fantasy land with the rest of your West, but I mean, hello. And so, like, as I've made the point before, Foundation is more accurate because the people in Foundation look like the people that are in the Empire and Foundation look like Westerners. They look like people that you might find in the U.S. I mean, they have slightly more Roman characteristics, but it's just you can be gay in the Empire. People like, I saw this photo in Israel where it's like, look, two gay men in Israel. We can't be settler colonizers. We have gay people. It's like, well, no, like fucking this dude and his boyfriend are gay, and then they go kill millions of innocent people for colonialism and imperialism, right? No, you can be gay in Empire, and you can be an LGBTQ plus person and work at Lockheed Martin. You can even be trans and work on a U.S. naval vessel and kill thousands of innocent people in Afghanistan with your drone. Now the U.S. I mean, there's the fights in it, and it's not like the U.S. is not pro-trans, it's not pro-gay necessarily, but it opens the door as wide as it needs to just to maintain empire. It's more important. That's why the Democrats run empire more than the Republicans nowadays, because that's what you need to hold the empire together. Because the empire is more important than any one particular social issue. Right? The Romans actually allowed many different peoples to come into the Roman Empire. The most important thing was, some Romans were not happy that there were, more African people in the Roman Empire or people from all abroad. There were fights in the Roman Empire, right? There were similar discussions today. Why do we have all these Mexicans and black and brown people are taking the wokeists and the people from outside coming from all these other countries are coming into our America and our Canada, and they're into our Britain as part of the U.S.-led empire, and they're taking away what made America great. The similar fights actually happened in Rome, where the Romans would say, these people coming from outside of the headquarters, Rome, should not be allowed to come in. They're infiltrating. They're taking away from what that was Roman. But the other imperials were like, we need these people to come in so that we can maintain our forces, and we need to allow a certain amount of them to come in, and even like some of them we have to have some representation in some of our leadership, maybe not the top leadership, like the Caesars might not be from North Africa, from all the way out in these weird ass places like Britain, but we're not going to have some people from, no Chinese person will ever be the emperor of Rome, but we'll need to have some people from these other places so that we can because we want troops from those other places to at least believe they can escalate and ascend to the top of the empire. So the Roman Empire was more plural, so that it could, to a degree, so that it could make sure that it had enough people coming in to staff its legions that would need to go out and conquer, right? And it did in the exact strategy, because some would be like there were more Republican, conservative, hardline Romans who'd be like, the greatest Roman soldiers are the true Romans that are from Rome, born, raised, and they will fight harder than any other Roman. They will conquer the world. But then more competent military strategists were like, that's nice to believe. We don't have enough. And empirically, human beings are not all that different, right? But you see, that's why the Republicans are not the competent imperialists, right? Hyper-conservative, truly large empires. The British Empire, same thing. They enlisted Indians for their own military and police forces, right? The British enlisted Native Asian and people in Hong Kong, right? It's not all British enforcers. The British were like, we don't have enough British officers to maintain China, Africa, all the world. The white monarchy, pure blood, dynastic British imperial crown will always be the ultimate Britain. But we need to enlist Indians into our forces, right? There's a movie RRR about that. We need to enlist Chinese and to believe that the Chinese in Hong Kong need to believe that the ultimate career, the ultimate opportunity, the ultimate situation in life is to move to Britain and to become a great British profiteer or British financier, or to the Chinese should aspire to Britishness, right? Now we as Windsor, we as the oligarchs behind the British Empire, we know that white Britain, white patriarchal Christian Britain will always rule. But we need to make the Chinese believe that. Now the thing is, the Chinese are not believing that anymore. In the last 5 years, they've said, I don't think I'm going to come to America anymore. It's no longer thought of as prestigious to eat at Starbucks or eat at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. There's a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse in Shanghai, Hong Kong, Taiwan, right? But Americans have recently been saying, how come nobody's eating in all the American eateries? That was the height. The height of privilege was to eat in a Western restaurant. But the Chinese are saying, that's one way you know that your empire is dying. Is because your ability to get the rest of the colonies to send their best and brightest, right? Chinese scientists are leaving the United States. The rest of the world is like, we're not going to be part of your British or American empire. You aren't the best. Your system isn't the best, right? We won't, Niger and Mali, Burkina Faso. We're not going to self-police with ECOWAS for you Europeans anymore. That's how you know your empire is running out. But anyway, so long story short, that's why Democrats and the pluralistic imperial subsections of the empire are the ones that are most competent. Is because the monoracial, like more extreme conservative branches, right? Like not neocon, but like the ones that are like believe that only the pure blood of the original people, right? Only the white of Americans should be the soldiers, right? We need white men to step on the Chinese skulls, right? This, but the thing is, like, that's not, you don't have enough, and they're not competent because they're white and they're men. They're just mediocre fucking fools, right? Even Donald Trump knows that, and he's not a competent man, but he knows that. So, like, you don't really want them fighting the wars. You want women running things, and you want people of color running things because they're more competent than you. That's why they want the Chinese to actually do the difficult accounting, banking, and science, because they're fucking better than a white person. Because it's a world. Because you can be a mediocre white loser and get away with it, right? They want women and they want people of color to do the work for them while believing that they deserve to rule them, even though the people of color women are actually better and more competent and should probably be in charge of a lot more things, right? Because it makes your empire more competent, right? Until people, that's why you can really rule by lying. Until the people figure out, what the fuck am I working for this white man for? And that's why women should all leave all their husbands and all the useless dudes and just just be single, or just be with the non-men. Especially if they're shit, they should have to prove, right? Because if the average man is 4 times more incompetent than the women, they should have to prove they're worth 4 times more. Otherwise, like, what do you you're perpetuating patriarchy. It's not fair. It's not fair. And in fact, but that might be how the U.S. finally ends. It looks like that's what's gonna happen. Is you're gonna have the dudes are all gonna basically go their own way, and nobody's gonna care, right? And the women and people of color are going to be masking and building communism and overthrowing and striking and stopping capitalism and taking proper precautions. And then the rest of the world is going to be like, fuck this people that are trying to get us to come to their countries that are falling apart. Why the fuck is Africa, Asia, Latin America going to come to the US and Britain and the EU when they're fucking collapsing and racist as fuck to be part of your subject? Anyways, that's the end of the stream. Because it's already 12:40. But anyway, so that is how the self-flagellations, right? The lost, overextended wars, like the Britain attacking in the Britain trying to hold on to the Suez Canal foolishly. That the U.S. is its war in Ukraine, its wars in Iraq and Vietnam, and these adventurous tragedies repeating as farce that the U.S. keeps engaging in all around the place. Its foolish sanction wars, its failure to take care of the material needs of its population in its 10 cities, dying in its 10 cities, its massive upswell of internal unresolved and extreme, even more extremely intensifying class contradictions that are playing out in the SAG-AFTRA and the writer strikes. Shout out to the SAG-AFTRA and writer strikers, by the way. Keep on going. Don't give up. I hope that Hollywood just collapses, honestly. I think there's a possibility that all movies and TV shows will just... There might be AI written and AI generated TV shows, and they'll all be terrible garbage. It'll be like the bargain bin. Like Disney and Netflix and all the Apple shows might turn into like maybe one of them, like Hulu or one of the smaller ones, will become... We only have human writer and human actor produced real human talent shows. And... people will demand, I only want those. I don't want these AI generated ones. And then Disney and Netflix and all these big fat old dinosaur imperial, flagellating sperm tail, sperms flagellating, mistaking their flagellations for complexity, like Bob Iger, right, and the CEO of Sony and Paramount. These old fat fools, run by white guys. They will only have AI generated garbage content, and then there will be 2 industries. I think that's my prediction. There will be like AI generated industries, and there will be like human written and human acted that will be actually of quality that people want to see, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Fun fact: I just recently learned that. Before I go, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the new movie. All the writers and actors, as far as I know, if I find out something else, I will report that. But the artists that were drawing this movie that's doing very well. The new show, Seth Rogen put it together with there's so many big Ice Cubes in it. Seth Rogen, Paul Rudd, the TMNT, like all the writers and the artists that had to draw. It's very like comic book looking. You can see actual scribbles in the screen. Like there's a scene with the smoke, and each frame of smoke looks like Neofeud smoke because I actually drew all the smoke scribble. So it looks like a Photoshop, airbrush pen that like just with like 25 curving lines, and then there's another 25 curving lines. So it looks extremely hand drawn, which gives it a very unique and cool look to it. But all the artists like were treated like very, very well, and nobody was maltreated as far as I know. Artists, writers, actors, everybody. Unlike some other Disney pictures that many people are of course upset at. And even like unfortunately the Spider-Verse has had some the animators have had many problems with the Spider-Verse series, unfortunately. And so I don't know what exactly, but my prediction is that like there will be like there will be like artists and writers, like maybe SAG and AFTRA might have problems, but they might SAG AFTRA writers and actors and creatives, right? And VFX writers, anyone who actually works on movies, writing, acting, sound, design, animation, all of it. They might create their own industry that's like human made actual created products. And then there'll be like AI generated products, and has a handful of the most hack computer programmers, crypto bros, and sellout, empathy free programmers will work on that. And all of that will be schlock. It'll be like looking at some white guy's AI generated art that he made NFTs out of. And that's what Sony, those will be the next Ant-Man's, Avengers, and Star Wars. It'll just be AI generated schlock with like Luke Skywalker's face and, Bob Iger inserting himself, with terrible scripts because there's no competent men, straight cis male business guy writers and artists, and so it'll just be crap. And then Disney will, because it's Disney, because it's Star Wars, because it's Marvel, because it's your favorite thing, it will have some staying power for a bit, and then it'll get worse and worse and worse and peter out. And then there will be this other industry where people actually want to see in something made actually interesting, artistic, with actually funny jokes that are actually fresh and good, like in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where they actually had teenagers riffing and being teenagers with each other, and actual good movies and good TV shows. And that's what I predict, because I don't think the Hollywood is going to negotiate with that, writers and actors. I mean, it's just going to be like, fuck you all. We're going to make as much money as possible with this stupid AI, because people who run Western studios are fucking stupid white guys. So self-flagellating sperm with Hollywood characteristics. So, and they're going to watch everything burn, and they don't care. They're going to watch Sony burn, they're going to watch Disney burn, they don't care. Like this guy. So but that's just my prediction. I don't know if that will happen. We'll see what happens. That's a science fictional prediction for you. But either way, writers, actors, and everybody should stick it out. VFX artists, video games. I want to see all the video game, like I said last time, all video game workers, programmers, musicians, writers, artists, 3D artists, level designers, all go on strike, right? Break the video game industry into AI generated video games, like just like AI corporate, just I don't care, pump out more microtransaction games, and then like make a whole other industry where it's like people who don't want to do that. And then because if you really want like plagiarism software crap, then you can go that way. Oh, another interesting thing is be careful if you do use AI. What I would say is don't use it AI if you are making stuff, because Steam Steam and many other platforms are just rejecting anything that has AI attached to it. Any AI generated Stable Diffusion, ChatGPT. It's like one I saw one Steam developer just recently. He just thought about having a ChatGPT conversation that you might be able to have random conversations using ChatGPT, and Steam said no, you got to get it out of there, right? And so just a PSA: if you're a game dev and if you're a creative, do not be using that stuff. Let the capitalist dude bros who think that it's the new wave of the future use that stuff, and then discover later on that everything they've ever done is not going to be sellable because of IP infringement and all kind of other problems. Because that's what even the corporations are doing that. And anyway, that's my final word. It is 12:48. Time to go. Don't forget, everything we do here is supported by Patreon at patreon.com/Neofeud. help us stop the burning of everything, and including Hawaii. Consider helping us out through a direct donation through Ko-Fi. Neofeud is a cyberpunk adventure game that is about the in the vein of Blade Runner with an overlay of Game of Thrones like political intrigue, and it is also a game. Speaking of cyber science fiction and robots, where humans create AI and sentient robots arrive, but not as Terminator overlords or singularity saviors, but conscious machines are humanity's unwanted bastard children. Or some are geniuses designing flying cars, beating cancer, inventing teleportation, but millions of quote unquote defective prototypes roll out of the factories and legally conscious but unhireable. These quote unquote defectives are shuffled through public housing and welfare assistance, straining already overburdened social safety nets. And so Neofeud is a very science fiction, iRobot, Asimovian story, but from a native Hawaiian indigenous colonized person's perspective. And also it's an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-racist cyberpunk game. And it's made at the Silver Spook Cooperative, where there are no bosses and there are no CEOs and there is no landlords. So consider picking up the game for any or all of those reasons. You can also get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows, Mac, and for Linux. It is on itch.io for all those systems and also on sale there. Maximum revenue comes to us when you buy Neofeud there. You can get all the Silver Spook games like Decolonizers, where you kick capitalist colonizer butts in the 1970s. So you can actually kick Empire's ass, but the real world one, also known as the U.S. Empire, in this game. And you can also play get in Digistar, or it's another science fictional game that is about dealing with Empire as well. So it's a lot of Empire. I mean, I'm always dealing with Empire all the time. Pigeon with Gun is a game where you actually play a pigeon with a gun, shooting giant robot gajillionaires and F-16 pilots and tons of corporate cops. And Woman is a book by Holly, where Holly was raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and this is about critiquing such systems of self-flagellating sperm dickheads like Jordan Peterson and all those nasty people. And you can also get this for free or throw some money our way when you pick it up. Also, you can follow at Silver Spook Games, at Octodon.social, at Silver Spook Games, at Mastodon.social, and you can also follow on Twitter at Silver Spook Guy for my personal takes, at Silver Spook Games minus the E in silver for the games related stuff. There's Instagram and there's Facebook, and you can also follow Terminus. Twitter is broken because of a sperm mistaking his flagellations for complexity, also known as Elon Musk, and so this is not going to work. But anyway, you can follow at Silver Spook Games, at Silver Spook Guy, and also you can follow Holly at the there you go. Mistaking my sneezes for complexity. You can follow Terminus. Terminus C is Terminus Cyberstar. That is the low poly cyberpunk immersive sim in the vein of late PC games like Deus Ex and System Shock 2. I'm also I'm the content director and lead writer of this game. Neofeud 2 is coming very soon. I'm trying to get the rough version of it done in this month of September, and then I have to still do finalization and music and voice and all that stuff. But a rough version of the game should be done very soon, if I go according to schedule. And you can also follow Holly at the Tech Fairy. Holly is, of course, partner here, producer and manager with the Kate Nix show, primary caregiver, writer, educator, and helps out with sharing important information, such as that, and making sure that people mask and learn how to mask, and that's us in the store, masking and making everybody jealous and not getting sick. Holly had to go on a mandatory 2 plane trips in 1 day, bus rides for a mandatory government appointment that we couldn't get around if we would have. But and for 3.5 years, we have had 0 colds, 0 flus, 0 sore throats, 0 stomach bugs, 0 COVID, 0 even any kind of respiratory problem. Other than some like allergy related stuff. But no sicknesses at all, and life is way better. You don't have to interact with dickheads. The mask scares off some shitty anti-mask foolish people, and because they don't want to talk to, which is good because I don't want to talk to those clowns. And also you don't have to wear like face makeup there if you don't want to. Also, it gives you additional anonymity, which is nice. And so, like, I'm just saying, we're just saying, you know, you should consider that. Consider that it actually works. Masking does work. We don't even have like, you know, we have like we have N95s, we have the KN95, we have the cloth and 3-layer mask sometimes, which is, it's actually 5 layers. It's actually equivalent to an N95. And with that, we've been in many spaces, like, you know, grocery shopping, in the stores, in a museum. We've been in all kind of spaces, you know, in a bus, zero sicknesses. So I just want to say that masking, it works. It seriously works. It works for real. Like, I mean, even without COVID, right? There's so many other things you could catch. We got nothing. We were in front of somebody talking to us for an hour who was definitely sick, like coughing and sneezing. We got none of us. We had 4 of us in a booth 3 feet away from somebody coughing and sneezing for an hour. We didn't get anything. So masking works. I don't know why the fuck. Anyway, if you're not masking, consider it. And if your government is not recommending it during this time of massively increasing COVID sickness and death, that's because you have absolute incompetent Neros running your hellscape. Thank you so much to all of these people for your support. Without it, we have difficulty continuing to do this work. And we'll be back in the evening for more Silver Spook streaming. And keep your mirror shades polished. You know, be careful for that. Be careful for the flagellating sperm. Watch out for the landing on that. Burning Rome. You know, it can get a little hot. I want a mask plus some sunscreen. All that all those burning Romans and burning trees, particulate matter, plus the COVID in the air. You want to have a nice 3-layer mask for that. Anyways, have a